All right. It looks like we're live, Jeff.
All righty.
All right.
Hey,
Welcome back, anybody listening. Timlin Talks episode number 3, I believe it is. And those of you that have been here before, it's a casual roundtable with at least one other person. And today I have the famous Jeff Johnson here with me.
wow, famous.
Famous, infamous, and famous. Jeff, I've known Jeff for quite a long time and working in SharePoint from various organizations, and he has been with us for I don't know quite a while now. He's our main sales account manager, schmoozer, and so he offers a different perspective on maybe some of the stuff that the super technical guys have. But Jeff, you want to welcome yourself aboard?
Yeah, good. I guess it's still morning. Good morning, everybody, whoever's out there. So I am glad to be on the show today, coming to you from Vermont. So as we work our remote workforce. So looking forward to chatting about intranets and some other stuff today.
Yep, we have some higher level topics today for those people that maybe a little bit more of a sort of a business or a needs focus. That's why Jeff's on the channel today. So as a reminder, I'm not an expert live streamer, but I am an expert talker. So I'll try to remember every now and then to let everybody know that we do this live, and you can obviously also looking at it after the fact. I have no idea what you're doing right now, but if you are live or if you're not live, ask a question, and if we're live, it will go to us, and we can maybe try to respond to it in real time, which is really the ultimate goal of this event or these events. And we'll certainly try to help out. And even if you're not in real time, subscribe, come back, looks, and questions, and we'll maybe throw that into the bucket for the next roundtable. So some of these come from questions we get from customers, from people like yourself, and just from our internal findings. All right, so today I'll give the high level. We're going to talk a little bit about the resurgence of the intranet, get Jeff's impression on that. We're going to talk a little bit about the kind of return to the workplace offering that Microsoft has, plus some stuff that we've done kind of specific to customers that are a little bit different. We can at least throw those ideas out there, and then maybe get because we have Jeff on the horn here, a little bit of the kind of the business needs, what he's seeing when he's talking to customers, what he's seeing us deliver for our customers, kind of capabilities of the platform from that perspective. Sound good, Jeff?
Sounds very good.
Awesome. All right, so let's kick it off for the intranet. So, I hate to ask the obvious, but hey, why are we getting so many more requests for intranet these days?
I think there's something called a pandemic going on. I've read about it occasionally. So, we've definitely had, we've been doing intranets for, I don't know how, ever since I've been at Timlin 7 years ago or whatever, but definitely like a much higher volume this year, a much higher interest. I think I can think of at least 3 accounts that like had it in the plans to either redo the intranet, or there were a couple one smaller company I'm thinking about that was like going to get to an intranet, and all of a sudden it was like, I need it yesterday. I got to communicate with my remote workforce. I got to keep going with my culture and making sure people get, they're not coming in the office, they're not seeing our signs, they're not seeing our branding, they're not getting a feel of the culture. We're really trying to keep that culture. So definitely seeing a ton of it over the first 9 months of the year. So I would say at least twice as much as we usually do, I would have to say.
So would you say it's kind of a relatively equal mix of social engagement, keeping your employees kind of like connected to the organization, versus like formal communication, letting people know what's going on, like publishing information? Like, what do you think the split is, or the sort of desire there?
Yeah, we certainly have the latter one there. You always have like, I got to get news out, I got to get information out, right? I don't want to stop sending, company-wide emails and have people reply all and all that fun stuff. But there's definitely been a higher priority on requirements on the social side, and definitely people are more interested in making sure they, expose, they get that messaging out, they get those interactions out. The water cooler replacement talk, right? That's definitely a much higher priority than I've seen in the past. It's heavily involved in all the discussions at this point.
Yeah, good. And those of you that just saw Janet flip on and off, whoops, that's Janet. She does helps us do marketing. Hi, Janet. Yeah, I mean, I like, to me, it seemed a lot like there was a people started to get worried from like leadership started to get worried about people being disconnected, like kind of socially, right? And there was this fear of, you know, I don't think maybe some people underestimated the replacement cost of all of a sudden people were used to going to the office, right? And I know we'd go to Dunkin' Donuts runs, right? We get coffee, like that stuff matters, right? And I think people are trying to replace that in some capacity with kind of intranet and maybe a Teams combo, and I mean, at least that's kind of my high level kind of perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the other stuff that's just become did not have anything to do with the pandemic. You know, search is obviously super important. You know, mobile first is obviously super important. Like those things have just been creeping up over time. But I think the personal, you know, maybe personalization a little bit more. The social, it's definitely got increased on the because of this pandemic. So
yeah, and I think it's this will lead into my next question for you is, you know, the kind of desire to use an intranet. We've been building intranets for a long time, right? And there are plenty of people that would say, you know, I had an intranet in my last company 10 years ago, and like it was terrible. Like nobody used it, nobody put any content in. You know, what do you want to tell people about like how the technology may have changed? Obviously, the needs are a little bit more prevalent, so people are more likely to come to an intranet now. But like, you know, kind of the way that you build an intranet these days that gets that user adoption and gets the engagement.
yeah, I mean, it's funny. I don't know that I've ever talked about this with even you much, but like, you know, in my days at a prior company where we first met, like I was the SharePoint administrator and I built our intranet, which was really basically a place to put document libraries, you know, which we still see, and which unfortunately some people kind of equate that with a SharePoint intranet. So we certainly see quite a bit of that out there. But you know, the tools now on modern are just, you know, they're definitely so much better, obviously, right? And it just makes it easy to do. I mean, Microsoft sometimes takes them a while to get there, but they're not that stupid, right? And they figure out what everybody needs and what everybody's been asking for years, and they get there. And those tools are there to make it easy. And yeah, they've, you know, the whole hub site modern approach, image based. You know, some people think that's a breakthrough. Some people say it's still okay, right? But you know, when what we're doing, we should talk a little bit about live tiles too, because obviously what we're doing there brings another level of dimension to what you can do from just a total UI branding look and feel, which is important. You know.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question is, so if you take it beyond just what the technology gives you, you know, we've been doing a lot more live tiles intranets. You just want to give a quick kind of like synopsis on why that's better than an out of the box deal?
Yeah, you know, we've obviously been doing this a long time. We've run into, you know, customers that, you know, what their number one priority is in a new interest is how it looks, how it quote unquote pops, right, and how it looks that way. And you know, honestly, we we don't believe that that's the most important thing. I get the first impression stuff. I get that. I get the, you know, I thought SharePoint sucked in my last job thing too, right? So then they don't want it to look like SharePoint. I get all that, but at the end of the day, that's not actually what matters. Like, how many intranets have we seen that somebody says my intranet's terrible, and we look at it and go, well, it's really not terrible, but if you didn't update this, like, you know, CEO report in the upper right column, like since a year and a half ago, you know, like maybe that would be better, you know, but you know, back to your question, you know, live tiles is, you know, we looked at a whole bunch of products and a bunch of them, I don't know, I consider it like break the rules of Microsoft. And, you know, as far as like, they're just a total another application that's just using 365 as a repository, whereas live tiles is really built on top of Office 365 and uses 365, and they don't try to build stuff that SharePoint does, right? So just gives you a whole number level of, you know, web parts, branding, you know, that we get when we could solve that quote unquote pop problem, right? So
yeah, yeah, a lot easier to customize. A lot. I mean, I like the sort of the pop out panel, power panel, where you can add sort of custom, like commonly used work activities. If that's stuff that's like kind of you'd have to build that yourself or difficult to manage or maintain, and that's a critical stuff that gets usability. I think that's what makes you want to make it your homepage. Is if I pop there and it's got the power panel with like, you know, my expense report, my timesheets, my HR, whatever they want to put on that panel. I think that really gets people like as the hub, right? And then content is key. And I mean, you're right. Like we used to show up at some places where we were going to bid on some intranets, and and they'd say, "Well, our current internet's terrible." Like, take a look at it. I look at it, I go, "Well, that's pretty nice." You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
I get scared. I'm like, "Why don't you like this?" And it's all because people don't use it. And I'm like, "Well, it looks nice, but like that's not what gets people to use it." Which I think is the point you're saying. It's value, right? Value.
Yep.
You got to provide valuable content, and you got to make a commitment to it, which is why you didn't touch on this, but we build intranets very differently than most organizations, right? We build them over a period of time as kind of like a model of spend some time up front and then get on like a really good feedback loop and help people with content, help people with the maturity model, drag users into it in a way that they want to be there, continue to refine it as opposed to just build it and walk away and hope that it takes off.
Yeah, I mean that's where we've seen our model of like the continuous improvement work so well, as opposed to like the big bang built. I mean, probably some of those intranets when we walked in and got a little scared is probably because the previous vendor came in with a big bang approach, and I'm going to build you this super cool looking intranet, and here you go. And day one, the customer's really happy, and day 90, they're like, "Why did I spend that money? Like what did I get out of that?" So that's where I think our 50% model works so well.
Yep.
So the folks, what we're talking about 50% is we always say, hey, you got a budget for an intranet, like budget 50% to do the build and then 50% to keep improving it and supporting it over time and training on it. And that's a much better way to spend your money. So.
Yep, exactly. Not a way to get more money out of a customer. It's a way to sort of spread it around so that it continuing to spread some fertilizer on it, so to speak. Hearing that term recently.
Hey, I got a question for you. So, we're obviously, Timlin is like hardcore Teams users, have been since the, client stopped crashing, I think. And, we run our business on Teams. Everything's done on Teams. Now we're a, 30-person shop, so it makes sense on that way. But there's a lot of people talking about Teams almost as your intranet or replacement or obviously right alongside it. What are your thoughts there on that stuff?
It's a good one. It's come up a few times. I think that all depends on how you define your intranet. I love Teams. Teams to me is what I think a lot of people wanted SharePoint to be for many years that it couldn't be. SharePoint's a great workflow, document repository, and kind of like a news aggregation system, let's call it. But it's not great at true collaboration, which is back and forth, kind of working on something in a persistent kind of chat environment. It was never really good for that. And so you got to look at what I look at it and say, what do you want your intranet to be? And it generally is going to be a combination of information dissemination, right? Content ownership, but then there is a place for the social aspect of your intranet, which is where I think Teams comes in. So if it were me and I had, a budget and I had a bigger company, I was building an intranet, I would probably carve out a location in Teams where I would build out some channels and tab structure that would be the equivalent of my intranet as a place for people to also get at the data, like sort of point it back to the intranet or the SharePoint site. So it lives in SharePoint. I mean, everything really lives in SharePoint anyway, right? Teams is just a window, but then have Teams point to it so that you could still get access to the information via Teams or via SharePoint, but you had some options for collaboration around some of the content too. So basically multiple ways to get at the same content. That's the way I would do it. But I mean, it involves extra sort of build, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. But, it's like, do you want people to have to say, oh, I got to go read the news on HR? And let's say they spend most of their day in Teams, they have to jump to the internet. Is it a big deal? No, but like if they can consume it in one place, it feels like certainly Microsoft is probably in line with what you just said, right? And where that will go, who knows? But and I also mentioned that even though like obviously you can obviously show news now in Teams and things like that, but LiveTiles has a pretty cool solution there as far as that reach product. So definitely, that's their focus and play. And if you talk to some of those folks, they believe that that's the place to do it. And I tend to, I guess I agree. It depends on the organization, though, right? We have a client that has like whatever 60 small stores, and that's a client that it completely makes sense, because they have needs for collaboration in the store, they have needs to get some information, they want to do it all mobile, they're first line workers. There's a lot to be said on that side too. So
yeah, I mean, I like Teams as the jumping off point. Like I want it to be my single pane of glass, because it's just I hate having to go to multiple different applications to get the same thing. Even if the data lives somewhere else, I don't care as long as I can get to it through Teams. What I like about Teams that I think a lot of people probably also like, but maybe not think of it this way, is that it provides a whole bunch of context for you that you don't really get from a URL. So like one of the reasons why it's successful is because when you go there, you're already drilling down into like contextual work areas and notification based information without really thinking about it, right? It's more natural the way our minds work. And that's why human beings tend to bucket stuff into folders, right? It's how we organize stuff. Teams kind of does that for you in like a way that's easy to manage and navigate. They kind of give you the first 3 layers of it. So by the time you click a couple times into a team, into a channel, into a bolded thing that says there's new content here, you've kind of already gone through 3 pieces of metadata visually, which is the same thing as clicking down 3 folders to hope that you can find something. There's something about the way it works that it's really good for me, the way my mind works. So I imagine that's why it's so successful, amongst other things.
Yeah, it'll be, I tell you though, there's going to be a huge team sprawl problem, because Microsoft just opens that up and so many people are just banging it out. And, some of the clients we talked to, including Microsoft, just talks about how they have way too many teams and it gets to be tough to find. And, we continue to talk about governance, and some people think that's a 4-letter word, but I don't think our version is, but I get why people think that, because they equate it with a manual that's sitting on somebody's shelf, weighting the shelf down, causing the shelf to bend in the middle because it's so damn big.
Totally. And this is the thing about Microsoft. I love Microsoft, obviously, because we make our living on their tools. But one of the reasons why we make a living is because they don't do a great job necessarily helping you deploy it properly. Microsoft's goal is to sell utilization, right? They want you to use these tools, and so they even recommend, they go out on a limb a little bit and recommend, that you release the tool into the wild to get some utilization. That helps them. And I realize what they're doing is not altruistically. They're also saying you need to get feedback to understand how your people are going to use this, because people do use it differently. But all I can harken back to is 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when they released SharePoint in 2003, and it was like everybody's creating sites. They're all site collections, and then somebody had to rein it back in when it got ridiculous. And so I agree with you. I think that a little bit, spend a couple of weeks thinking about how you want to provision these teams, how you want to apply metadata to them, how you want to make sure that one doesn't already exist when people want to create another one, how you archive them, some basic stuff. I'm not talking $100,000 services engagement to get it all mapped out, but give yourself a fighting chance. You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And people just infer it's just going to be this big deal. It really doesn't have to be. Just some standards, some naming conventions, some very basic, simple things. Maybe you put a process in front of it so people request a team and somebody could even just sanity check it. Maybe you actually automate stuff. I mean, it depends on the organization and the size and the volume, but there's definitely a balance also between allowing people to use teams as well as shutting it down. I mean, we know we have a lot of customers. We talk to a lot of people that IT's like, I'm not allowing that. I don't want to mess. I get it. But, as long as that gets solved relatively quickly so people can use it before they go out and buy Slack or whatever else they might do, so.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the one thing we all have to remember is digital transformation doesn't occur by shutting everything down. And that doesn't mean just, let it all go and hope for the best, but your first reaction to everything as an IT person these days can't be shut it down. It's just, that's not going to get you where hopefully your CIO and your organization wants to go. So I'm with you. It's, it's help them down the journey. That's what we do, right? We try to help them down the journey, and everybody's journey is a little bit different.
Help them down the journey and try to keep up with all the stuff that Microsoft's putting out on a ongoing basis. So
certainly investing in this platform.
Yeah. I'm seeing actually some of their notifications are like they're delaying stuff because they're overwhelming people. So
yeah, well, that's part of what we do. Even is just help them kind of stay on top of what Microsoft's doing, right? To be prepared and aware of it and how to plan for it, right? I mean, they're investing a lot of money in this, so that's good, and that's good for us, good for our customers, good for digital transformation in general. So I'm happy to see that, because Microsoft has in the past had the occasional, we're just going to abandon a product line, like the whole workflow and info path thing that a lot of people are heavily invested in right now, and they're going to have to start making some changes. And it's too bad they didn't give people a gradual kind of re-architecture roadmap. They kind of did nothing for 10 years and then came out with Flow. And that's tough. Yep. People made our living on trying to sort of help people with those tools, and what are we supposed to do?
Well, Nintek's like that for sure.
Yep. It's certainly got Nintek a good business. All right, so switching gears here, we have a couple more topics. I know we spent a lot of time on intranets because they're important. I'll make a quick reminder. Anybody watching live, please submit a question if you have one. If not, happy to have you here listening. If you're coming in after the fact, still, please ask a question. It will get to us, and we can stick it on the next Timlin Talks. Ryan Thomas here, Jeff Johnson here. If you just joined us, just talked about intranets. And topic number 2, return to the workplace options using Microsoft 365. And, really we have 3 we're going to talk about today. We can kind of run through them quick. One is Microsoft has their own Power Platform or play for, it's called the Return to the Workplace. Highly recommend you guys check it out on the video. We also have sort of a custom, readiness check, maybe using Power Apps or forms that you can customize to your needs specifically. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Microsoft Bookings, which is what one of our guys has done for at least one of our customers. So I'll kick it off to Jeff and talk about, first of all, any high level thoughts on this whole, hey, people have to go back to work, or they want people to go back to work, and they're trying to figure out ways to help them do it. What are your thoughts there, high level?
The first thought is, whether you automate or not is it's almost the same as governance. It's what are the rules? Can I go back to work? Do I go back on Monday and Wednesday from 9 to 5? If I'm in the biotech world, which is a big part of our business, when can I get the lab equipment? You know what I mean? When can how can I do my job? How am I supposed to do my job? Some people, I'm sure, dying to go back in. Some people are probably dying not to go back in. Some people have to go back in, right? So it's definitely a lot to think about. It probably actually gets back into communications and, a plan and everything around that. But, we've certainly seen a lot of activity there I don't know how much we've implemented Microsoft's return to the workforce. I know we've done it a little bit, but we were doing, some simple forms and workflows just early in the game. I know we did some stuff to reserve lab equipment and, kind of coordinate stuff. So I think it's going to really help. It's going to really help just to avoid confusion, because when you get confusion, you get, people feel uncomfortable, and then they're going to think about stuff they don't need to think about, so that's my initial thoughts.
Yeah, we'll just run through them real quick just to give people a little bit of let's call it the backstory, in case they're interested. And really, we're just trying to sort of skim over the topic. But, the return to the workplace from Microsoft is kind of the heavy hitter. It's free, and it's obviously Microsoft. They're trying to help. They're also trying to promote Power Platform. So it's all written in sort of all Power Automate, Power Apps, and it's some pretty interesting stuff. There's a location readiness, infection rates report. It's very business intelligence driven. There's mobile employee check-in, self-assessment, and sort of how do you manage your facility for cleanliness. There's a whole slew of stuff in there. Obviously, you might spend a while just getting it configured properly. But for an organization where it's critical and you don't want to really go buy some tool, because let's face it, I don't know how many companies had built tools like this to sell prior to this and how fast they could develop them. It's a no cost solution. You don't have to use all of it. But certainly it gets people embedded with the Power Platform, which is what Microsoft wants, and they want to help. So something to consider at a real high level. Second is kind of the real custom. So probably less work overall to implement, because it's much less of a delivery, but it's still very custom, which what you're talking about, Jeff, which is once you define your rules individually per company, you can kind of build them using the Power Platform, build it from scratch. It's not that hard. We've been doing it for customers, and really a scaled down version of Return to the Workplace. Yeah, and then bookings, right? So I found this to be interesting because one of our guys came to us, and he's actually going to do a demo on this because I thought it was interesting. That and it shows the ingenuity of people trying to solve problems. So I wanted to mention it that Microsoft Bookings, if people aren't familiar, is it's generally meant to be for scheduled workers, staff that has to come on and come off, and they schedule their days and time periods. And one of our guys used a limitation, like a headcount limitation, to use Microsoft Booking so employees could book their time and respond to a set of questions, and the app won't let more than the limited amount of people in the office at that particular time, which I thought was a pretty, I like that. Creative ways to solve problems with the tools that we have that the customers kind of already own for licensing. I think he just did this under kind of our standard managed services, so it wasn't even a project. It was just a kind of called a micro project as part of our center of excellence. So that was kind of cool. and something you just want to throw out to the audience, just to, if anybody's interested, like, you got options.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many options out there. I mean, I know one of the things we did initially when this first started happening, the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts said they were going to have to track everybody that went in the office. That was going to be a requirement. So we actually built a couple of those solutions, to relatively simple tracking, just so, yes, it did keep counts on people, but it was really just to know, hey, Ryan Thomas went in the office from, on 9/2, from 9 to such and such, just so they could report that back. And who knows what's going to happen? That's some of those rules might come back into play depending on what's going to happen in the next few months. Who knows? But there's definitely options, and they don't have to be that complicated. And I mean, that's why we built the business on 365, because there's so many options and tools available to do stuff with. That like we talked about before, it took them a while to get the flow, but boy, when they got there, like they're really doubling down on all that, and they keep doubling down as time goes on. So
yeah, if they stick with it, I'm happy. That's really what it comes down to for me. Stick with it. Keep making it incrementally better.
I'm interested to look at the Microsoft List stuff when that come out. I know, really get into that. I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well. So, but that we won't get into that now.
No. I love that. I mean, they called it Data Flex for about 30 minutes and then switched the name, but that'll be an interesting concept, because you can really kind of build interesting applications inside of Teams and et cetera. All right, we're only about 5 minutes left. So our final topic is more high level, kind of the top needs from the business. So, Jeff, you talk to more of our customers than anybody, and you do more of the pre-sales than anybody, which means you hear more about what people need than anybody. And I know part of one of the reasons why a lot of people hire us is because they like the fact that we get lots of ideas and lots of needs analysis from lots of different customers. We have, 40 or something ongoing managed services customers, or whatever the number is. And so we get to hear lots of things, and, you're probably more knowledgeable than anybody about all the stuff people are doing. So just curious, like, what are some of the top hitters because people want to know, like, what can I do with these tools that's going to really provide some business value for me? Any ideas coming off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely obviously seen a ton of Teams. Like, the numbers been published on the usage, and that's been reflected in requests that we get. We've gotten Teams. We do simple governance, guidance, security, like setting up stuff so they don't have the sprawl that we were talking about earlier. We certainly have done some very neat automation in Teams as far as standardizing teams and their channels and their tabs based on the type of team, whether it's a project team, whether it's a department collaboration team, whether it's a some other type of team. Certainly seen a lot of activity there. I would say where we're seeing more work than anywhere is all around business process automation. The platform is really, people have finally seen, holy cow, I can do so much stuff with this thing, and it's a cost savings. And and if you haven't done that, and all of a sudden you relied on the manual form, and an HR that was going to process the form manually and enter it into a system, all of a sudden you're like, nobody's in the office. You're kind of in a bad place, right? It's the digital transformation journey that has to go on, and we're doing so many things there. I can't believe some of the things I hear from some of our folks, like they do on a day-to-day basis. You just mentioned the bookings one. We hear stuff like that all the time. And it's all of a sudden, I just did this, really cool automation for a customer, and it's a big savings for them. So definitely seeing a lot of that through, whether it's just standard HR processes or legal processes or finance. I mean, a lot of different opportunities there. And the third thing, actually, that's probably even been the busiest, and I'd say the last couple of months, has been reporting in Power BI. It's a pretty nice tool. If you structure things the right way, you can do so much reporting so quickly. I mean, I've seen a lot of activity there. So,
yeah, thanks for the overview. And I guess I'll just comment on it quickly. The time we have left is as the tools have matured, we don't know everything about these everything down to the bottom of the barrel, and I certainly don't. I used to be more knowledgeable than I was, but as I dig in, I get really surprised at the power of these tools. And some of our guys that are really, they focus, they love it, they hammer on it, and then they show us what they did. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And my first thought is, if I didn't know that we could do that, our customers probably don't know. How do we find a way to get this information in front of them and show them that Power BI is awesome? And it was somebody with a little bit of knowledge, access to some data. I mean, I'm a visual learner, and so you can tell me something, but if I can see it and sort of like slice and dice it a little bit, we learn a lot about our own business, I think we can agree that
Yeah.
we try to grow our own business, right? We've seen when we look at those reports, like, oh, I didn't realize that trend, or whatever, like this account or whatever we're working on really gives us insight into sort of making our business better.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like having the effect it is on our little business, right? Can you imagine what it can be on somebody 20 times our size or whatever? I mean, I couldn't live without our RBI reports. I couldn't live
Exactly.
without it. So
I mean, think about the scale. If you could find a 1 or 2% discrepancy or something somewhere and save yourself something, by fixing a problem, that's big money at some of these bigger companies, and it's a super small investment for what you can get out of it. And I think, that's why reporting is huge, right? And that's the whole concept of data mining. That's where we are these days, right? Go get data, go get data, go get data. Okay, fine. But then how do you actually look at the data in a way that can be useful for you? And I think that's kind of where we're at now. So that's why it's picking up.
absolutely, absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll echo business process automation before I wrap. I mean, the fact that we can't go in the office or haven't gone to the office much is really accelerating this stuff. And we have a running joke, right? I think it's even on our slide deck that what was the biggest cause of digital transformation in your organization? And it's three choices, and COVID is one of them. And I think the CIOs of the world they laugh when they see that, because they realize that as much as the pandemic is awful, it was a kick in the pants to get this stuff rolling forward that frankly we've been doing. And one of the reasons why we haven't missed a beat during this whole thing is because we have a largely remote workforce. We do everything kind of SaaS model. Like, we don't really have to go to an office if we don't want to. And it wasn't by design. It was just kind of like we were embracing the modern tools, but it worked for us. And it really shines a light on what our other organizations can be doing to prepare themselves kind of for this modern workplace world.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're in the digital transformation remote work world as opposed to the office space world right now, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Jeff. I know we're a minute over. I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate your insight as always. And hopefully some people got some value out of this. And I will say thank you to everybody for attending, whether here in person or after the fact. Please submit questions. Please reach out to us if you don't want any more sort of in-depth knowledge, or if you want to hear something on the next Timlin Talks. And we'll figure out what we're going to do in the next few weeks. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. It was fun. Take
All right,
care.
have a great rest of the day.
Bye now.
Bye.